Welcome to the Psychology World podcast with me, Connor Whiteley, psychology student and international best-selling psychology author of over 30 psychology books, bringing you the latest psychology news, fascinating psychology topics and more each week. If you want to learn more, then please check out connorwhiteley.net/books. And don't forget to like and subscribe to the YouTube video or follow on your favourite podcast app. And here's the show. Hi everyone, and welcome to episode 293 of the Psychology World podcast with me, Connor Whiteley. And today's episode is on what is the social function of Halloween. And it's Sunday, the 27th of October 2024 as I recorded. So today's episode is a really fun one, and I actually enjoy this a lot more than I thought. Because on the podcast, we never really tend to look at social psychology anyway, but we also never really tend to look at any sort of holidays. Now, this is mainly my fault because whenever a really cool holiday is coming up, I tend to completely forget about it unless it's Christmas and New Year. So that means on the podcast, we never really tend to look at any holiday or seasonal aspects of mental health, psychology, human behaviour whatsoever. But I wanted to change that, mainly because me and my housemates were talking about Halloween this week. So I was thinking, I should do a podcast episode. So the reason why I wanted to focus on the social function of Halloween is because it's very easy for all of us, myself included, just think Halloween is just Halloween. There's nothing special about it. There's not a particular reason why it's popular, amongst other things. But when we consider that Halloween started 2,000 years ago based on a pagan ritual, that it somehow survived over 2,000 years into the current period, and when we consider that Halloween is a multi-billion-dollar industry that can last up to 2 months, to be fair, just for a single day, because the shops tend to get quite ridiculous with it, that is when it becomes interesting. Why has this holiday lasted 2,000 years? Why do people spend so much money on it? That is where this gets interesting, very weird, and considering there's been lots of different holidays over the years, or over human history, that have died when a particular culture dies off, Halloween is not one of them, because just as a little side note, when it comes to my holiday themed short stories which come out around Christmas time, I always base at least 3 or 4 short stories based off of different ancient traditions that have now died off. So it's interesting, it's fascinating, you're going to love today's episode. So you've got that to look forward to in the content part of today's episode. So moving on to the psychology news section, we're reading from the British Psychological Society Research Digest. And the first one is, benefits of going with your gut. Every day we make a multitude of decisions. Most are relatively unimportant and have no clear right or wrong answer. For example, should I walk the dog before or after going to the gym? Should I shop for ingredients to make a pasta dish for dinner or a curry? For every one of these decisions, there are 2 possible approaches: carefully analysing the relative merits of the options, or making an intuitive gut choice. In new work in emotion, Karen Remes and colleagues report that going with the gut can provide us with more than a quick answer. And I will just read one paragraph from the BPS Research Digest write-up. Data gathered during the study period also revealed that mood improvements from decision-making persisted until the decision was implemented, and that intuitive decisions were more likely than analytical decisions to be implemented as planned. The team suggests that this might be because they were liked more. In other words, they were more in line with the participants' own preferences. Okay, so this is quite a good one for a few different reasons. Firstly, As an autistic person and just my personal preferences, I don't really like gut decisions, even though I know I do tons of them. But when it comes to like decisions, even sort of even sort of like these options over, for example, should I walk the dog before or after going to the gym? For starters, I don't have a dog, but I think I would, to be honest, I'm pretty sure I would definitely do it before though, because there are the different merits to that option. And a curry is a lot better than a pasta dish, even though I really do like a pasta. So there are different options though, and also that I just like thinking things through though. I don't really like going with the gut. So there's that aspect though. So my personal preference is very analytical thinking. But as good as going with the gut is, because it aligns with our personal preferences, we're more likely to actually implement the decision once it's made. This is actually not a very good strategy for a lot of the different aspects of our lives. But most importantly, mental health, because like if you're depressed, if you've got an eating disorder, if you have biased cognitive processes, then going with your gut, for example, if you've got an eating disorder, might be to not have a proper dinner in that sense, just to have very disordered eating. Well, eating though, for example, like you might just have like crisps like for dinner, or something very very small that is actually going to harm you in the long term. That might be your preference because of your biased cognitive processes. So I understand that going with your gut could increase your mood, but when it comes to mental health conditions, and there are other areas of your life, analytical thinking might be a lot better. But then again, if you've got biased cognitive processes, then that's going to impact your analytical thinking skills anyway. So it swings and roundabouts, but it's important to think about the limitations of this. But if you want to be happier with your more unimportant decisions, then yeah, maybe just go with your gut. The next one is the self, socials, and dementia. A diagnosis of dementia can have a hugely consequential effect on someone's sense of self. Neurological conditions, by their very nature, can impact how someone thinks, communicates, and engages in day to day activities. It makes sense then that the self image might change too. Writing in the journal Dementia, a team led by Bournemouth University's Catherine D. Tabbitt looks at one channel through which people with dementia can explore and navigate their shifting identities, social media. They found that such platforms can offer the opportunity for those with dementia to express themselves, increasing resilience and strengthening their self image as it does so. Okay, now this is a brilliant study simply because self image is so important. I've learned that quite horrifically over the past few months, though, even though this week has been absolutely brilliant, though. So the interesting thing about self image is that self image is very interconnected with our self esteem, though, because if we don't see ourselves very positively, then we have decreased self-esteem. We don't really like ourselves. We don't have compassion for ourselves, and our entire mental health just dips because we think that we're in like heavenly flawed. We're very bad, or bad, we're a burden, etc. And I completely understand, and I've seen different bits and pieces that dementia makes someone feel the same. So it's interesting that if we use social media to actually help someone with dementia to actually have a good self-image, then that could be powerful. Plus, because this is active social media use, as I talk about in my book Social Media Psychology, then there shouldn't be that many negative mental health impacts, because the negative mental health impacts associated with social media tend to come from passive social media usage. So, because this is active use, because you're posting, because you're liking stuff, and you're interacting with things on social media, then social media can have a very positive impact. It'd be interesting to see if someone does try and incorporate this into a clinical intervention just to see what the outcome would be. But that's food for thought for the future. So the last one is, imaginary society gives window into support for wealth redistribution. How we better redistribute wealth might be one of the most pressing questions of our times. When the world's richest 1% owns 43% of global assets, it's clear that inequality is one of the defining features of society as it currently stands. In a new study published recently in the Journal of Social Psychology, one proposal for encouraging change emerges, shifting people's beliefs about what causes poverty. Across two studies, the team found that when poverty and wealth are attributed to external factors, support for redistribution increases, creating a potential lever for change. Or, this one I really like, but I've sort of got to be careful here because it turns out that whenever anyone talks politics, they get attacked quite badly. And I mean, I get attacked quite enough for the podcast. So, interestingly, I think this is a really good one, simply because we do need wealth redistribution because it is quite ridiculous that the top 1% owns almost half of like global assets. That is not right. That is quite outrageous, and that is just very, very unfair though. But something I've always found interesting is when it comes to like poverty, most of it is not down to the actual individual. Like for 99% of like cases that someone being in poverty is not their fault whatsoever, because we have external factors. For example, you've got the societal factors. For example, I have society in like a for example, how society is like structured in increases oppression. So it oppresses a people. So by that can lead to like a poverty. Then you've also got cycles of like poverty, which is where like different generations just like continuously end up in like a poverty or poverty, and because there are no initiatives to help break the cycle or like a poverty, future generations again just continue being in this poverty. So there's a whole bunch of like different reasons. Then you've also got like a lack of access to education, healthcare, transport, and a whole bunch of different external factors. So, with that being the truth about why poverty continues to persist in society, how do we help encourage people to help change that? So now that we've got this possible intervention, then this could be a very powerful force for change in the good that can help people improve their lives and ultimately get people out of poverty, so their mental health improves and they can contribute more, including earning more money so that they can pay more tax, and then that means more money can go to our public services, including schools, hospitals, transport, and the welfare system as a whole, so everyone benefits. So I really hope you enjoy the psychology news section, so let's move on to the person update. So we're moving on to the person update. This week has absolutely been brilliant for a wide range of different reasons. But there's going to be three that I'm mainly going to be talking about though. So firstly, I had such a healing day. I mean, my mental health is the best it's been in months, because on Tuesday I learned a lot of really great stuff about myself though, and I was able to have a very healing day there where I realised a bunch of stuff that really did impact my mental health in a very positive way though. So I want to do a book shout out. If you or anyone you know, including your clients, has suffered a sexual trauma, I highly recommend Healing Sexual Trauma Workbook. somatic skills to help you feel safe in your body, create boundaries, and live with resilience by Erica Sersham. I'm not sure if I've pronounced like the surname right, but it's a brilliant book. It's been really helpful. So I finally went back to it on like Tuesday morning, and I started like learning some of the stuff. That's been really helpful to me. So I really do recommend that brilliant book though. And I think the interesting thing about it for me as a psychology student and aspiring clinical psychologist is that like when it comes to mental health conditions that aren't trauma, I don't tend to focus on somatic skills though, so the body's response, even though psychoeducation is an absolutely really important aspect, especially when it comes to conditions like anxiety. So I know in those sort of like situations, then it's very important to focus on the like physical body as well as the mental health. But when it comes to trauma, I've actually forgotten that the physical body is really important. It's actually just as important as much as the mental health stuff and the psychological aspects of like trauma. Mainly because Tuesday was the first time that I've actually been able to untense my body and I was able to relax. So I felt safe in my own skin, I felt safe in my own home, and everything around that though. So that was really healing and really beneficial. So it's definitely impacted my mindset and in terms of like my future clinical work, especially when it comes to trauma, because now I know that the body is actually just as important as the psychological side there. That's definitely something that's going to inform my practice in the future, and I'm actually really grateful for that though. So I am still chipping away at that book, like a few pages a day, because I do want to keep healing, and the counseling's also going like really well at the moment. Then it was also a really good week because even though I'm not going to tell you what my specific study is at the moment, because I want to get it like launched first, what is happening is that my supervisor looked over my survey for my next research study. She looked over my ethics form and she said that yep, that all like looks good. So I finally submitted ethics. So in the next 2 weeks, because my university is really quick, thankfully, I should be able to launch my third study, which I'm really looking forward to, because in an ideal world, it's actually going to be a 3-in-1 study. So my participants do this survey. I'm hoping to get enough data. I might be able to do 3 papers out of this, all focusing on like different aspects. It was only when I was finishing the like study up, but then I realised that I could actually do like quite a lot with this paper by accident. So I'm very hopeful about that because it would be brilliant. And then I've got 2 more studies I'm thinking about launching in January, but then it'd be the end of my master's next September. So that's probably the last study I'm going to be able to be doing, which is a shame. Which is a shame there. And because my PhD sort of fell through for quite sensible reasons, I will not be doing a PhD. So I will not be a researcher in the future. Well, unless it's in the mental health services that I work at. So it's all good. Good though. Part of me is a bit sad about that because I really love researching my topic. So thankfully, life is really good, and I'm really happy. And as always, I always love to hear your thoughts and feelings on today's episode. So you can always email me, connorwhiteley@connorwhiteley.net. You can always leave a comment at the show notes at connorwhiteley.net/podcast. And you can always tweet me on Twitter at sci-fi Whiteley. I always love to hear from all of you because it really helps make the podcast feel more like a conversation. And today's episode has been sponsored by Social Psychology, a guide to social and cultural psychology. So the reason why this is a great sponsor for today's episode is because when it comes to Halloween, this is all about social function. So this includes our fears, is a place in a society, and a whole bunch of other factors that we're going to be looking at in today's episode. But if you want to learn more about how social groups impact our behaviour on the individual level, but also the group level, then this is a great, really easy to understand and engaging book that's really going to help you because it goes into a lot of depth about social psychology. For example, what is our self-esteem? How does it impact our behaviour? But also the different types of persuasion. How does that persuasion impact us? And then we also look at the social group though. For example, the inner groups, out groups, and we look at Milgram study, the Stanford prison experiment, obedience, compliance, and a whole bunch of absolutely brilliant factors that I flat out love. And I mean, even though I would never study social psychology again, I still love this book more than ever because it's brilliant, it's engaging, and there's so much fun here that you can actually apply it to your everyday life. So it's a brilliant book. I cannot recommend it enough. So if you want to learn more, then that is Social Psychology, a guide to social and cultural psychology, available at all major ebook retailers, and you can order the paperback and the hardback version from Amazon, your local bookstore or local library if you requested. And if you want the AI generated audiobook, now you can. Then please go to selected audiobook retailers, including Spotify, Kobo, Google Play, Barnes & Noble, Every, and selected library systems, including Baker & Taylor, Biblioteca, and Overdrive. So, whilst buying books helps to support the creation and the editing of the podcast, my time is sponsored by my wonderful patrons. And as always, a massive thank you to my patrons, because your support shows that you like the show and you want it to continue. So if you're wanting to become a patron of the show and get access to tons of great rewards, now you can at patreon.com/The Psychology World Podcast. Or if you want to support the podcast on a one-off basis, now you can at buymeacoffee.com/Conor Whiteley. So that's enough for the personal update. Let's move on to the content part of today's episode. So we're moving on to the content part of today's episode. So we're going to be talking about what is the social function of Halloween. This is going to be a lot of fun and I'm really looking forward to it. So let's dive into it. When we consider that the modern Western holiday of Halloween is a billion-dollar industry that often lasts 2 months, is based on an ancient Celtic holiday, we need to ask ourselves why. Why do people love Halloween so much that I see Halloween decorations in the supermarkets in late August and early September right up until Halloween, which at that point in the calendar year there is a very creepy mix of Halloween and Christmas decorations up in the supermarkets, and that is just creepy. I mean, this isn't in the blog post, but I went out Thursday afternoon and I went to Card Factory to to try and get a birthday card for my best friend. And it was just so creepy that there's Halloween stuff, but then there was also Christmas cards. And this also happened in the supermarket we went to a few days before. It's wrong. It's really, really wrong. It's not even mean Halloween. And also stores are playing Christmas music. That's not okay. So why do stores dedicate 2 months to this very popular holiday? How do they know that they can make an insane amount of money from Halloween? In addition, considering that the Celtic holiday that modern Halloween is based on is ancient and it was designed to ward off evil spirits and celebrate the dead, how has it endured and why? So, some academics have proposed that Halloween has a social function that is deeply rooted in our biology, since the fear emotion that is caused by humans believing something is dangerous or threatening makes adrenaline as well as other hormones get released into our bloodstream, ultimately preparing our body for the fight or flight response. Logically, this would make sense if fear was something that humans avoided, because surely being scared is horrible. It is, but the fact that fear is horrible doesn't stop people from chasing it. As a result of if we make threatening scenarios within a safe environment, for example, seeing a gory horror film in the safety of a cinema, then this terror and fear becomes socially sanctioned. This helps us to contain our fears too. Therefore, this connects to Halloween because the costumes we use, enjoy, and go out in allow people to experience some made up fear, especially as Halloween is essentially an imaginative form of a play for both adults and children. I know a lot of university students and my friends are looking forward to going to some Halloween parties next week at the time of writing. My new friend is going to one with the Rock and Metal Society, and I think me and my housemates are going to do some pumpkin carving. In fact, we're doing that today, and I've got to go and buy the pumpkins. Whilst the Halloween party is scarier, both the situations involve us creating a scary scenario in a safe, controlled environment. In terms of the literature itself, American sociologist Aman Etzioni argued that Halloween is popular in modern society because it acts as a attention management ritual that allows us to play out and express our collective fancies, anxieties, and fears. He wrote that in a 2000 article in Sociological Theory, and I think it's largely true because we never get to play and dress up as witches, vampires, monsters, and warlocks, amongst other creatures. We're all scared of these monsters, and it is interesting, for one night of the year, we get to not be afraid of these monsters. We get to express our fears and perhaps conquer them, or at least understand that they aren't as scary as we imagine. In addition, Dr. Jason Parker, a psychology lecturer at Old Dominion University, supports this argument, since in 2002 he spoke about how Halloween allows us to get a physical response because of us facing and being exposed to the physical expression of our fears, and this allows us to experience the feeling of accomplishment as well, all because Halloween plays with our emotions and allows us to feel like we've overcome our fears. In other words, if you have a fear of the witches and their magic, Halloween allows you to see, interact, and experience witches in the real world. Then you experience the physical reaction of fear and the associated emotions, and by the end of the night, you are alright, you are safe, and nothing bad happened. You can feel accomplished that you overcame your fears. A final academic argument comes from a 2008 article by Cindy Dale Clark, who proposed that Halloween is a complex process where the inversion of the meaning is very common and important. According to her research, Halloween is popular because children gain ascendance, I say in air quotes, through costume trick-or-treating, as well as us adults support the anti-normative themes of the holiday. Another way of putting her argument is that Halloween is the one day of the year where the social world can stop making sense, and that's okay. In other words, it is perfectly fine and socially sanctioned for adults not to be socially normal, like adults dressing up and partying like kids, and for kids to get candy from strangers wearing fun costumes. It gives everyone a break from the social norms of the year. Furthermore, Professor Tama Ichu from Duke University discussed in 2019 why we turn our fears into trick-or-treating. We do this because the scary and fear-inducing situations presented to us don't represent a true danger, so this simulated fear is a good way to practice the experience of being afraid whilst there not being a true danger, as well as most people enjoy the process of being a little scared too, so people find joy in the process too. Finally, death is our greatest fear, and Halloween presents this fear in many different ways. For example, death as ghosts, zombies, demons, and skeletons. Halloween represents all manners and forms of death. So Halloween allows humanity to capture how we feel about death and one day no longer being here. As well as Robert Langs writes in his book Death Anxiety and Clinical Practice about how Halloween allows us to celebrate life with a greater awareness of the inevitability of death. Subsequently, if we link this idea back to evolutionary and the biological argument, Langs is effectively pointing out how our awareness that life eventually ends is fundamental to human evolution. This results in humans being anxious about death, and these anxieties lurk and ruminate inside our minds, but they are never addressed in psychotherapy for a range of reasons. Now, this is probably because death is still too taboo in Western society to be discussed openly, as well as our psychological defense mechanisms of denial and repression play an active role in this lack of addressing too. Nonetheless, it is Halloween that allows us to acknowledge and celebrate that death will come for all of us, and that's okay. It is part of life, and that is why living and having a joyful and meaningful life is so important. And let's face it, Halloween is a much more fun way of dealing with death anxiety than talking about it in therapy, right? Conclusion. Whilst it's very rare that I ever actually remember to do a holiday themed podcast episode, as I'm normally way too busy to remember this until after the holiday, I really did enjoy this episode. Since we now all understand why Halloween endures, why people spend hundreds, thousands, and sometimes even tens of thousands on Halloween decorations, and we now know how a pagan ritual survived 2,000 years, and it's bigger than ever. We all understand that now. Halloween allows us to enjoy being scared, and it invokes our fear response. Halloween teaches us that being scared is okay, and we feel accomplished in the fact that we faced our fears and survived. We know that we can face our fears, fantasies, and nightmares like witches and vampires, and we all know that we will survive. As well as Halloween allows us to confront our fears and anxieties around death as a single united society. Ultimately, I think Halloween is a wonderfully unique holiday. Sure, there are monsters, people dressing up in costumes, and fear-inducing situations abound. Yet it is truly the only night of the year where every single person in the Western world is united in the fearful scenario in a safe, controlled environment. And that's where the magic is. There is magic and a wonderful social function in knowing that everyone is the same for a single night, a single holiday, a single fearful situation, where everyone is scared and hopefully having a lot of joy. Isn't that just strangely wonderful? So I really hope that you enjoyed today's episode and you got something out of it. I know that I did because I learned a lot about this, and because this is sort of the intersection between social psychology and sociology. I've been able to have some really good conversations with one of my housemates because they study sociology. And it's also just fun to know that Halloween does actually have a really important social function, and it's not this dumb holiday that everyone makes it out to be. So there's a lot of fun in that. If you know anyone who would enjoy today's episode, then please share it with them. I'm always really grateful when you wonderful people help spread the word about the podcast. And if you want to learn more, then please check out Social Psychology, a guide to social and cultural psychology, available wherever you buy books from. And if you want to support the podcast on a monthly basis, now you can at patreon.com/The Psychology World Podcast. Or if you want to support the podcast on a one-off basis, now you can at buymeacoffee.com/Connor Whiteley. So have a great day everyone, and I'll see you next time. Found it helpful. Please remember to like the video and subscribe to the YouTube channel and follow the podcast on your favourite podcast app. And if you wanted to learn more, then please check out the backlist of the podcast episodes or my books at conwiley.net. So have a great day, and I'll see you next time.